Coming to you live from the Shop Gym in Ashburn, Virginia. Hello and welcome everyone to the 2022 USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. My name is Leo Bonetandara, national referee in the USAPL. I'm joined here by my esteemed colleagues again for the Virginia Pro, Miss Kathy Marksteiner, Cat 1 referee, 7 world teams, 4-time world champion. Over here, USA Powerlifting Pro, Solana Lewis, podcast host, coach, Renaissance woman, you name it, Two White Lights contributor, of course. So we're here actually to talk a little bit about initially our USA Powerlifting Pro Series a little bit, the structure and how things are going to be changing. Kathy, tell us a little bit about it.
So yes, this is the first anniversary of the Pro Series starting off. We started off last year in 2021 with the Virginia Pro, and since then we've had selected meets throughout the year. Most notably was the Mega Nationals, which we had in June in Las Vegas, as well as the Arnold. So throughout the year, there's selected meets, specifically nationals and a couple of others that are available for pros to earn their pro cards at. Then they are competing against each other, much as the best lifter, but they're based on the formula called DOTS formula. The DOTS is simply a coefficient based on your body weight times your total, which gives you the ability to compete against other people in other weight classes. And then finally, we will finish up with, and the DOTS score gives you a leaderboard. And that leaderboard, the top 10 are invited to the Pro Series final, which will be at the Arnold. And we will have our Pro final at the Arnold with those top 10. There's 40 men, 40 women, raw and equipped, that are going to be lifting.
Very excited for that Arnold Classic finale. So with that, folks, we'll kick it to a break real quick, and we'll be back soon here with your USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. All right. Hello and welcome everyone back to the 2022 USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. Solana, let's talk a little bit about something that I feel like people aren't talking enough about. We obviously know this show is going to be mostly about the heavy hitters. You're talking about your Bobs, your Ashtons, your Perks, but you and I have always talked about kind of our interest in talking about some of the athletes that we don't really get to talk about too often.
Yes.
And more specifically, those girls.
Yes.
Those girls, the women USA powerlifting pros, and more specifically, let's talk about those top two that we had gunning. We all listened to the Two White Lights, No Free Ads, Two White Lights podcast, and Solana, you're a contributor to that podcast.
Yes, sir.
And we talked a little bit about the Celine Crum versus Sam Calhoun battle.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about that one.
So Virginia's own Sam Calhoun is competing today, and y'all, I think it's going to be an excellent meet because her and Celine are within 2 dots points of each other. Since it's a dots-based meet, that means everything. And on top of that, they're both about 63 kilos. We don't have their official weights yet because they're weighing in right now, but I honestly think it will come down to their exact weights. I actually calculated their numbers, and I had them both totaling about 1,035 pounds exactly, like when I calculated it. And that is with Celine Crum chipping all of her numbers from Carolina Primetime by 2.5 kilos, and that's with Sam hitting her same squat and bench, but surpassing her deadlift from the last meet and hitting 501 instead of her 486, which is what she hit at the last meet. But we've seen Sam Calhoun twice now hit a 501 deadlift, so we know it's fully possible. So I really believe this will be coming down to exactly what they weigh, and they'll be within maybe even 1 dots point of each other, which is insane. And then when it comes to Celine Crum, what fascinates me is Celine has done 2 meets back-to-back, and now she's doing this one. She did Mega Nationals in June. Carolina Primetime was only about 7 or 8 weeks ago, and now she's here again.
Quick turnaround.
Yes. Now, most people don't do great with back-to-back meets like this. I mean, you're competing at a high level. That's heavy, heavy weight on your back, on your body. It breaks you down. But Celine's an anomaly because Celine has done amazing. She did better at Mega Nationals where she took first place at the 60-kilo weight class, and she was not the person who we thought was going to take first place. And then she came into Carolina Primetime and increased her dots significantly. And then her training for this meet has looked fantastic, and I think she's going to increase her dots again and her total again, all within 6 months, 3 meets, which is insane.
That doesn't happen in powerlifting, folks. I mean, I think that there's a reason why she earned the nickname The Machine.
Yes.
Right? Celine the Machine. I mean, we've kind of seen the rise of Celine coming up through the Carolinas, going through the Carolina Primetime, and then at Nats, obviously.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about somebody we would consider a legend of the game already. Sam Calhoun. Give her her flowers while she's here. Give her her flowers while she's still at the top of the game. And the thing is, Sam Calhoun is... she's misses consistency, right?
Yes.
We've always seen it. She's always going for the 9-for-9 meet. She's always, and the thing is, she does the same way for her athletes. She's a coach as well.
Yes.
We always see her here at the Virginia meets. But I think it's important also to know that she does have the deadlift advantage.
Yes.
She does know that she has to pull after Celine.
Yes.
Celine at CPT, I believe it was a 468 deadlift. So it was a 212 pull. But for her, it's like we already know that like when she's gonna pull, Sam is still sitting there waiting to pull herself. So it's like we know that she's going to have that advantage later. The question is always going to be, and well, I guess we'll find out later, is where they are on body weight.
Exactly.
So it's going to come down to that dot score, and that's what's going to be really exciting. And that's what's really cool about the Virginia Pro Series and everything about USA Powerlifting's new iteration of the Pro Series. So, folks, we're super excited. Solana's super excited. I'm super excited. I hope you guys are as well. We're going to take it back to another ad here. So if you guys will just wait for a little bit, and we'll be right back with you with some more previews.
Cool. That was good.
All right.
All right.
All right, next up.
Our next.
Men are next.
Yep.
Yeah. Hello and welcome everyone back to the USA Powerlifting 2022 Virginia Pro. Joining us here again, obviously, Solana Lewis. Solana, we were talking a little bit about our top three, sort of our top five, but more specifically the top three that we had leading into this. And I know we were all listening to the podcast on Two White Lights, and you guys were talking a little bit about who you guys projected to see in your top three.
Yes.
I want to hear yours, but more specifically, tell me about your winner today.
So I'm going to start with Bob Matthews. I got the privilege of driving Bob down here for this meet. We were talking a lot, and honestly, he told me that he feels more hype for this meet than he did at Nationals, and he won at Nationals. I'm sure a lot of people have been paying attention to his Instagram. He's just been PRing, literally doubling what he did on a national stage. Doubled it. The squat, bench, and deadlift. So
wasn't that the winning total as well? Like he doubled the national, like
he
over
the
winning total. Yeah. Incredible.
It's incredible. The momentum he has for this meet is so great, and he's also watching his body weight too, making sure he's raising a little bit lighter. So I think we have a lot to see from Bob Matthews. And then, of course, we also have Austin Perkins. Now, Austin Perkins came back from a hernia surgery, couldn't even do nationals, and we were all wondering, including himself, would he be able to get back to where he was? Well, he surpassed that. He started focusing more on his nutrition. He got to rest up as he needed. And he has never looked so good going into meet. He's hit PRs after PR. He just hit 3 kilos less than the 74 kilo squats world record. He hit a 661-pound squat about 9 days ago, and it moved well.
Incredible.
And his bench is blowing up.
I mean, he talked a little bit about it last night at the Q&A, if anybody was able to actually watch a little bit of it. He was talking about how his bench is more indebted to the fact that he's actually been paying attention to his nutrition. He was actually admitting a little bit that he wasn't really kind of doing everything possible to maximize his performance. Admittedly, he was saying he was pretty much only eating once or twice a day.
Yeah.
So now in a sport like this where you have a guy who's genetically blessed, he's born to be a powerlifter. He's born to be one of the best powerlifters in the game.
Yes.
And now he's finally actually eating to perform.
Yes.
And I mean, you saw the bench press. I mean, what was it the other day? Was that
431?
Incredible. I mean, like so fast off the chest too. And it's just like for somebody who's a 75 kilo lifter. I mean, that's an incredible bench press. That's an incredible bench press, especially given the fact that I think on record we actually have him at a 396.
Like that is almost 35-pound difference.
That doesn't happen, especially not in powerlifting, especially not at a lower body weight, and somebody who's been doing it for as long as he has. I mean, we're talking about he's been to 7 nationals. He's what does he have here? He's been to the Raws, to the Raw Nats plenty of times. But more than anything, it's just like the guy has records in equipped. He has records in Raw.
Yes.
I mean, Austin Perkins is in no way underrated. Shout out Angelo Fortino. but truly seeing him now add in the bench press on top of his incredible squat and deadlift. I mean, Austin Perkins is somebody who could mess around and potentially win this meet. What do you think?
Absolutely. I believe that he can definitely win this meet. When I was calculating some numbers, I had Bob, I had Austin, and I had, who we'll talk about next, Ashton Ruska within about 5 dot points of each other. So if they put up what they've been putting up in training, it's going to be an amazing meet to watch. And on top of that, watching Austin Perkins deadlift, it didn't look close to what he has been hitting, but I have seen on record, like, he peaks so well for his deadlift. He typically he's off by like 50, 60 pounds, and then he can just hit it on meet day. Like, I've seen that multiple times.
Incredible.
It's insane.
Incredible. And you mentioned Ashton Ruska.
Yes,
and
last year's winner.
Right, exactly. and like the thing is, we talked about all these athletes already, and we haven't even talked about the winner from last year. The guy who's coming back to the Virginia Pro to defend his title. I mean, Ashton Ruska, you guys have all seen it. We all know who he is. He's one of the greatest powerlifters of all time.
Yes.
He's a legend already. But I mean, beyond all of the world records, beyond all of the kind of records that he has and that he owns already, we know kind of what he can do on game day. He comes in, he executes. He's waiting on you to miss your lift because he's not going to miss himself, right? He has done every single and he's done his studying. We heard it last night on the Q&A. He does watch everybody. He does understand. He knows what you're watching, and he knows exactly who's his direct competition. We asked him last night, and he said directly, these two guys.
Yes.
And he pointed directly at Perk, and he pointed directly at Bob. What do you think about that?
Well, it makes a lot of sense because that is quite literally his competition. On top of that, I think some people were like, I'm not sure about Ashton because his training didn't look exactly how it always has. But he came in last night, he was like, it doesn't matter. He's like, I hit what I need to hit. I'm going to do what I need to do. And the only goal is winning, period. That's it.
What did you think actually yesterday when we asked him? So I mean, like, how does it feel coming back from an injury? I know sometimes you had to rework the pec, you do the close grip bench press a little bit. I mean, how does it feel when you're trying to kind of bounce back and do those RP8s, RP9s kind of thing? And his response was actually kind of interesting. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so he basically said that it's very rare for him that he does RP8 or RP9 at all in training because the weight's so heavy, he can't handle that too often. Now, at first I was like, wow, it's kind of surprising, but I took a second and, you know, when you're the strongest of the strong, when you're lifting 800 pounds squats, like, you're right. How often can you handle that?
You really shouldn't get anywhere near that in training, right? And that's more a credit to his own coach. Shout out to the craft, Mr. Swolfester himself, Marcellus. Yes. I mean, being able to work with a high-level athlete, multiple high-level athletes, like he has Brandon Petrie as well, and all those other great athletes that he has, knowing kind of how to manage their training and their training volume, and knowing that it's not about any one session, it's not about any one peaking block. It's also about kind of being able to get them to the meet healthy, and then you redline when it kind of comes to these big meets, right?
Yes, and also when I was talking to Bob, we were driving up here, he said like the changes they've made to his peak and taper have been phenomenal. Like there are meets in the past, 2021 Nationals, where Bob didn't do so great, and they've made changes since then, and it's just worked out every single time, and you can see it too. Like Nationals, he did amazing. So I'm expecting to see big meets today.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't have the same problem he has where he dropped the bar and got, he didn't get his second deadlift because he dropped it even though he locked it out. So he's like, yeah, I practiced that. I don't do that anymore.
No, and we also mentioned jokingly last night that it's unfortunate that we don't have a fourth lift in powerlifting competing in dips.
Yes,
because if we
dips.
did, then Bob would obviously run away with the Virginia Pro. But with all that said, folks, we're going to kick it back to another commercial here. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back in just a moment. Hello and welcome everyone back to the 2022 USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. Solana, let's talk a little bit about some of our predictions for 3rd to 5th. We talked a little bit about our girls at first, and then we talked about the men. Let's go back to the girls. I know we talked a little bit about Jasmine Penn, Autumn Green, and our dark horse, some people have been talking about, Carly Richard. Tell us a little bit about it.
So let's start with Jasmine Penn. So Jasmine Penn is really known for executing on meet day as well. She's been competing for quite a few years, 2-time national champion in the USAPL. This past year, she won national champion, and she's going up against Autumn Green, who took 3rd place this year in the same weight class. Which makes it more fun because this is not necessarily a weight class meet, but when you have somebody in your weight class and go against, that's like even more exciting. It's like 2 for 1, right? You get to go against everyone and your own weight class.
Right.
Going off of Jasmine's training, she doesn't really show a lot of her training in general when she is in prep, but from what I've heard, she's expecting to hit more PRs. And another thing I know about her is for the squats at nationals, she really left a lot on the table because her second attempt was almost called for depth, but they overturned it and let her have it. Therefore, she took a very conservative 3rd attempt. It moves like a 2nd attempt, in my opinion. So if you're already stronger than that, I think we can see a really big squat from her.
Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously, we talked a little bit about Jasmine, and I think all of us had our top 5s, and you talked about you can kind of flip-flop depending on where Jasmine and Autumn could go, depending on how the day is going, depending on how things go in the warm-up room. But let's talk a little bit about Autumn Green. I mean, she's coached by none other than the Oracle himself, Mr. Steve Denovi, Mr. PR's Performance. I mean, Autumn has kind of shown she's had a very linear kind of career. Like all of her numbers have essentially gone up from meet to meet to meet. We saw her also at the Arnold Classic as well, and now we're seeing her again. We saw her at Nats, put up a great performance, and now we're seeing her here back at the Virginia Pro. If I'm not mistaken, she was also here last year. And she put up some big numbers, but Autumn Green is now starting to kind of get that reputation for being kind of like a big name, and she's like now she's a world record holder, she's an American record holder, she's been to Nats 3 times, she's been to the Arnold, so it's like we need to put some respect on Autumn Green's name. I mean, she's one of those people that, like, I mean, for me, she can easily jump into that 2-3 spot, you know what I mean? Like, if things go like awry for somebody else, like, she sneaks right in there. What do you think? So
she's had a lot of momentum this particular block for this meet. One big thing, I was talking to her earlier when we did some interviews, and she said what her and Steve changed was she does like 1 top set of barbell back squat and then switches to SSB bar because her lower back was getting really beat up. Since that change, I've seen her squat just climb up like crazy. Bench press, she added an extra bench press day.
Incredible.
And I saw her add like 20 pounds to her bench press.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I haven't added 20 pounds. I've added 20 pounds over 4 years. So that's incredible. And then also, deadlift, which is not her favorite lift, is also improving too. So truly, I think we'll see a lot from her. Now, one thing I know about Autumn, she's made sure to not make weights for the 75 kilo weight class because the 84 kilo squat record is lower than 75.
That's right.
She wants to get the squat record, which means a lot because I'm not sure where Jasmine's going to weigh. But if she's weighing more than Jasmine, then that's where I would say I'm not quite sure how big the battle will be. All it comes down to how much they weigh, which is huge.
That's right.
That's what we have a dot space meet for.
Of
Makes
course.
it more fun.
And we already talked about it. Unfortunately, we don't have that information for you guys
Not
just yet. They're still getting, some of them are still getting weighed in. Some people, we're not going to say any names, still haven't showed up as far as we know. But, you know, so far we kind of have everyone, they're getting ready. We talked to some of those athletes in the back, ran into Autumn, she said as much. And as far as I know, from what I've heard, this is not a meet where you can actually chip a record anymore.
No,
this
you
is
can't.
this is a meet where actually you need to go by the actual regular 2.5 kg increment. So if you're going to set a record, it's going to be a real record. It's not going to be just like a 0.5 kg jump. You have to make an actual 2.5 kg jump. So that's going to be really big, especially for somebody like Autumn Green, who could potentially be setting a record here today. Let's talk real quick about somebody that you guys mentioned on the podcast before, Carly Richard. Carly Richard is somebody who I'd actually been tracking a little bit on Instagram, watching some of her training and looking at her profile, looking at her past meet performance. I mean, she doesn't have a very long track record. I mean, we're looking at her record right now. She's only a 2-meet lifter. I mean, her career is very much in the nascent stage, and she came up. Her first meet was the Holiday Havoc in Pennsylvania. She had a 470 dots at her first
meet ever.
I mean, you want to talk about being born on third base, folks? I mean, it's right there. Carly Richard, her next meet, right after that, shortly after that, only 6 months, she drops a 5 .06 dots.
Yep, and
I
takes
mean,
second place at Mega Nationals. And
what-
gets her pro card.
Right, and it's just like, but the thing is, you see a story like that. How can we not be talking about her
Yes.
potentially coming in and maybe even upsetting some people, right? I mean,
Yes.
like, I think a lot of us, myself included, have her more slotted in that fifth spot.
Mhm.
But it's like, who's to say? I mean, with somebody who has kind of a linear kind of progression like that,
Yes.
still so early in her career, I mean, I think we're all pretty excited to see what Carly Richard could do.
I mean, when you have that big of a DOS jump from meet 1 to meet 2, well, meet 2 to meet 3B. I was talking to her earlier, and I was like, what are you expecting? She was like, well, definitely some PRs. She didn't really give a lot of info on how big the PRs would be, and she is private on IG. You might have more info than I do, because I didn't get to follow her. I think you're following her?
I am, yes.
Does she post
Yeah,
her
yeah.
lips?
She does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she does. And and that's why I feel so confident in being able to say, like, Carly Richard is somebody, I think she's the dark horse here.
Yeah.
She's the one we don't have a lot of data on, but I'm telling you, from meet performance and everything and her technique, she looks incredible. She's incredibly strong. I'm really excited to see Carly Richard. She's my breakout performance. That's the one that I'm going to call my breakout
Fair.
performance is Carly Richard. So
Fair.
with that, folks, we're going to kick it back to another break. Join us here in a couple of minutes. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys soon.
So once again, thank you for sponsoring Massage Hope.
Hello and welcome everyone back to the 2022 USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. Solana, we were talking a little bit about our fourth to fifth spots in the men's. So there's a couple of people who could be up for grabs here to be able to sneak in there. And I know we talked a little bit about some of the people that some of you guys might already know, the Dan Clements of the world, right? And some of the other guys like maybe Charlie Yang, Eric Lapointe. But who would you think actually has the potential to actually land in that fourth and fifth spot to actually get some money?
Honestly, I have quite a few people who can juggle it out depending on how they perform. I put Dan Clements and Charlie Yang really high up there, along with Sean Noriega. So I think those are three big people to really be looking at, but also we have a lot more too. We just saw Sean in the good girl, bad girl machine. I think he's getting those adductors and hamstrings warmed up a little bit, getting ready to go.
Wearing the Pit Vipers as well. Yeah. He was wearing sunglasses.
What I will say though is we all know that he's always, pushing for the head-to-head meets at nationals, right? But I think that there's something to be said when you are going against everyone is less pressure in that sense where you don't go against like your number one competitor. Maybe that makes it easier for you to mentally have a better meet day. So we'll kind of see.
And absolutely. And Sean has been very kind of vocal about sometimes getting in his own head and being his own worst enemy sometimes when it comes to overthinking things and sometimes being a little bit too hyper-focused, right? And I think what was interesting and refreshing last night, he talked a little bit about in the Q&A, was saying that, this meet is one that I'm actually kind of going into not like without like any sense of urgency or not taking it seriously, but I'm in here to have fun. I'm not actually chasing anybody here anymore. I'm like, there's no one person that I'm trying to gun after. It's more just like I'm coming in here. I've been training well. My body feels great. I'm ready to hit some big numbers. You guys have already seen it in the gym if you follow Hamstring Poppy at all. I mean, Sean is one of the more explosive, exciting lifters in the game, and we do see kind of like the big bench press and the big deadlift and how quick and snappy it is off the floor. So it's like, I think this one's going to be a big treat for a lot of the fans out there, a lot of his own athletes as well. So, but let's talk a little bit about a guy that we like to refer to as powerlifting's shadow. Mr. Dan.
Just started that, by the way.
His nickname, at least for us, is the Shadow. So I mean, if you guys know who we're talking about, it's Mr. Dan Clements.
Yes.
I mean, Dan doesn't post a ton on Instagram or his training. What little you do see is always incredible. I mean, for him, I think it's more about the performance always speaks for itself. I mean, we're talking about an American record open deadlift record of 297.5, 656-pound deadlift. I mean, and we're seeing Dan walk by right now, but it's just like, he's one of those guys that kind of keeps to himself. He shows up on game day. He executes. He's one of the best lifters in all of powerlifting. And, I feel like we don't know too much. I mean, we were talking about reaching out to him just to kind of give people an idea to get some of their profiles, getting some questions answered and stuff like that. Dan was actually the last one to send us in the night before. Just to give everybody some context. But we didn't have like a ton of answers. His answers were actually pretty simple. And the thing was just like, but it's something interesting about it because when you see him on the platform, he executes. He is incredible. His technique is great. His coaching, shout out Matt Holden from Game Day Barbell. It's one of those things that I think you can never count him out. And he's always looking for that big deadlift. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we see something 700 here out of Dan Clements.
That wouldn't shock me either. And also, we all know that Nationals was a little bit surprising, right? He went in. We had him as the favorite. He got second place to Eric Lapointe, who's also here today. But one thing I was talking to about Dan earlier today during the short interviews was this training cycle better than the last one? And he said he hit some awesome PRs, and he really thinks that he will be executing today. And then when I talked to Eric Lapointe, who's directly going up against him, and I said, do you think he'll beat Dan today? He said, yeah, absolutely.
I love the confidence. And actually, this is something that I think people have been noticing a little bit, in almost a shift in Eric Lapointe that we've seen kind of vocally. Eric Lapointe has been in the game for a while now, and if anyone who knows anything about powerlifting, I mean, he's been to the Arnold 5 times. He's been to nationals 6 times. I mean, he's
this year's national champion.
This year's national champion. I mean, thank you. I mean, Eric has been around the game for a long time. It was really great to finally see him break through and win that 75 kg class. And watching that at Ron Nats, it was honestly one of my favorite things to watch the entire meet. But more than anything, listening to Eric talk about how, like, hey man, like, don't overlook me anymore. Like, I'm a guy now, and like, Eric has done the work. He's truly suffered to get here, And I like the confidence that he's coming into the Virginia Pro with. What do you think?
I mean, truly, it's like a different Eric, in my opinion. He's piece of blow on Instagram, and watching his lifts and talking to him today, too, I saw at the end of prep, like, everything kind of came together. He said it was a rough prep, but he said by the end, he hit everything he wanted and more. And I saw some big PRs at the very end in every single lift, especially that deadlift. So, truly, I think that he's proven that he can execute, he can hit attempts on the platform. Therefore, I think we'll be in for a show today, because truly, if they both can execute, I don't know which one's going to win.
No, and that's important to note as well, folks. I mean, when we're talking about a dots-based formula, I mean, you throw the head-to-heads out the window. Now it's really just like, hey, these guys are trying to maximize what they can do given the body weight that they just weighed in at. So Eric Lapointe, obviously, again, we talked a little bit about his confidence. But let's talk a little bit about the guys who could potentially sneak into that 5th place spot, right? And I know we talked a little bit about the national champion himself, Mr. Charlie Yang. I mean, Charlie Yang is a 3-time national champion. He's been to national 7 times. He's a world champion bench press in 2019. And he was also an Arnold champion in 2020. So he's a very decorated lifter. And I feel like people don't talk enough about how great Charlie Yang is as a lifter, because he's one of our lighter lifters. But at the same time, when it comes to a dots formula, that works to his advantage.
That works great, right?
I mean, he's incredible.
He really is great, and also watching his training. So going into nationals, it was looking pretty good. He ended up going 8 for 9, took 3rd place. Now that was great for him, because I know that the meet prior was like an easy meet for him. Meet for that, I think he was dealing with some injuries. It didn't go that great. So we see a lot of good momentum going into nationals. And then for this prep, when I talked to him this morning, he said also kind of rough prep, but at the end of it, he ended up hitting some good PRs. Saw him hit a 650 deadlift. He hit 639 at Nat, so that's really excellent. We're seeing a nice little uptick. And so overall, I think that he can come in today and really put on a good show if he can execute like he did at Nationals, or better.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about also another person we could have sneaking in there. I'm actually looking at him right now in the Pit Vipers himself, Mr. Hamstring Poppy, Sean Noriega. Sean Noriega, we talked a little bit about it earlier, how it's like it feels like he's kind of coming in with a breath of fresh air and he's feeling confident. I actually have him potentially coming in and sneaking into potentially that 5th spot, depending on how things go for everybody else. We don't know. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Charlie. We talked a little bit about Dan and Eric. But let's talk a little bit about the people who could possibly sneak in, depending if some of these guys don't have a great day. You know how powerlifting goes. It depends on the day. I mean, if it were tomorrow, some people would have a better day. If it were yesterday, some people would have had a better day. But today is the Virginia Pro. And some people might not have the day that they're expecting. So tell me a little bit about anyone else you think might be able to have the potential to sneak into that 5th spot and maybe get some money.
Well, I also think that Sean definitely has the potential to do that, because his training's also going well. Now, let's be real, right? We know with Sean, training can go great, and then meet day, if something's slightly off, it can turn into a not-so-great day. But like I said before, I think that with a bit less pressure and not a head-to-head battle, it'll make it easier for him to execute. It just comes down to execution. And that's been very up and down most of his career, I'll be blunt. So we got to just kind of see what happens there. There is someone here today, though, who has a lot of up and down execution, but not at their last meet. That'd be Marcus Dodo. Marcus Dodo just did Carolina Primetime. Now, before Carolina Primetime, we did a previous show with 2 highlights, and we said that the best he ever did was 7 for 9, ever. And so even though training looked great, we were like, we're going to predict that he's going to miss some lifts. Well, he didn't. He went 9 for 9, had the best meet of his life, and that put him in 3rd place for this year's 90-kilo class. All right? That is huge.
Incredible.
That is huge. On top of that, training looks like it's going at least as good. I won't necessarily say better, and it's a quick turnaround, just like Celine Crum. It's like 8 weeks, you know? So it's not necessarily looking better, but definitely at least the same. I think he can come in and push and get some chips today on his total, which will be huge for him, because to go from one big meet to another big meet and improve your total at all, excellent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we always talk about like kind of some of these other names, and sometimes a name like Marcus Adudu gets kind of lost in the shuffle, honestly, and he doesn't kind of get that shine that I think that he otherwise does. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's been at nationals for 5 times, 2 times at the Arnold. I mean, he's won the Pro American in 2019 at an 82 kg class. He's at a higher weight now, and it's just like the man is called Muscle Man Marcus for a reason. I mean, we saw him come in earlier. I mean, like, he was busting out of his sweatshirt. So, I mean, like, I see this guy, and I'm like, Marcus Adudu still also needs to get his shine while he's still here as well.
Absolutely.
So, very, very excited. So, with all that talk, Solana, let's give the people what they want here. Let's give people their top 5s. I want to hear your top 5.
All right, I have it written down. I have my top 5. I'm saying for the men's side, Bob Matthews for first place. I'm giving Austin Perkins second place. I'm giving Ashton Ruska third place, last year's winner. I'm giving Dan Clements fourth place, and that is me thinking that he will turn around and hit all of his lifts as opposed to nationals this year because we know he can't do it, right? And I'm gonna give Charlie Yang fifth place. And again, it depends on what happens today.
Could
but
be Eric. Right?
It could easily be.
Yeah.
It could be Sean.
Yeah,
it could be
Sean,
anyone here.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great top 5. I'll give you my men's top 5 as well. Not a huge deviation from you.
Okay.
I also think that Bob is our winner.
Wow.
I mean, Super Saiyan Bob era, call it what it is. But on top of it, right behind him, I have Austin Perkins.
Okay.
Then I have Ashton Ruska. I think that potentially I think we saw a little bit like how he's talking about training, potentially if like maybe there's a lagging injury there, how it's going to look. I think that Ashton he could still make second, but it's just like
he could get first, dude.
he could get first,
Let's
right?
not say
I
he
mean, the
can't.
thing is, like, it's not fair to talk about like who's your top 5 without mentioning that there's only 6 dots points, I believe, or 5 that only separate Bob, Perk, and Ashton.
Yeah.
So like, really, you can't go wrong where you go. That's just the order that I happen to have them in. So it's Bob, Perk, and then Ashton.
Okay.
After that, I had Dan Clements. Dan Clements, obviously the Virginia Beach product, one of the best lifters out here, and I think we all talk about like how great he is.
Yep.
I think today's the day where you guys are going to remember his name. And then my 5th to round it out, Mr. Nori played himself.
There you go.
I have Sean Noriega. Phenomenal lifter. I think when you have a guy who's not concerned about body weight, who's kind of coming in here having a little bit more fun, I think it's going to actually work to his advantage. Somebody who actually kind of needs a little bit more free-flowing, kind of like something that where they don't feel so much pressure, I think it's going to work to Noriega's advantage. I'm going to see him sneaking in there to the top 5. Now let's hear your women's top 5.
Woo!
I want to hear this one. This one's spicy.
All right, so it has to be spicy because, again, Celine and Sam within 2 dots points of each other. All right, that's crazy. I'm giving it to Virginia's own Sam Calhoun. Now, this could easily change, right? But at the end of the day, they both are known for going 9 for 9 at this point. Celine has gone 9 for 9 the last 3 meets in a row. And they can both do it, but I think with the pull advantage Sam has, I give her that little uptick right there. That could be all she needs.
Absolutely.
Second place, I'm giving it to Celine Crum. Third place, I'm going with Jasmine Penn. Fourth place, Autumn Green. And then fifth place, I'm putting Carly Richard, even though I didn't get to see her training at all.
So let's talk a little bit about, I'll do my top 5. And as well, I'm not going to deviate too much.
Okay.
I'm from Virginia, full transparency, so I'm not going to pick against Virginia's own.
Oh,
I
man.
have always been a huge fan of Sam Calhoun. I've watched her come up. I've seen her since like 2017. I've learned that you never pick against Sam Calhoun. She's one of the best in the game. She's one of the greatest to ever touch a barbell. So I'm going to pick Sam Calhoun to win. Right after that, I'm going to have Celine Crum.
Okay.
After her, I'm going to have Jasmine Penn. And then right after Jasmine Penn, I actually like Autumn Green. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Jasmine doesn't have the day we're expecting. I could actually have Autumn sneaking into that 3rd spot. I don't know what you think, but rounding out my top 5, I also have Carly Richard, kind of our dark horse, our breakout performance prediction. So what do you think?
You were saying I don't know what you think. Now, I will also say, we haven't mentioned this, I think if anyone has any slip-ups, Jasmine Penn can move up too.
Yeah.
She really is an incredible athlete.
Two-time national champion.
Yes,
Yeah.
and honestly, like, if anyone misses the lift, I could still see her pushing in and taking second and
That's right.
surprising everybody.
Yeah.
That is 100% opportunity she can
Yeah.
have. Again, Autumn Green, amazing athlete. If you're asking me directly, I think because she's making sure to not make weight for 75 kilos, I think for that reason, I don't have her taking 3rd.
Yeah.
Or 2nd because
Yeah.
it's a dots.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why. But it
Yeah.
doesn't change the fact that her training's been phenomenal and she's good. She's getting better at executing.
Yeah.
She went 8 for 9 at nationals, and she was pushing to try to take 2nd place
Absolutely.
for that last deadlift. So I think here, if you're not necessarily pushing, going against the person, you'll get all 9 your attempts. So.
And we'll see, obviously. Well, with that, folks, you guys have heard our top 5s. Send us along your top 5s on our Instagram, on our YouTube page. We'll wait to see them. With that, we'll kick it back to a break. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back in a moment. Hello and welcome everyone back to the 2022 USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro. We're actually joined here by the man, the craftsman himself, Mr. Marcellus, the Swole Fester.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on stream. We actually had a couple of questions. Solana, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like to work with some great athletes like Bob and Ashton.
I mean, first of all, you're known for coaching some of the best athletes in the game at this point, especially in the USAPL. We all know you're coaching both Bob Matthews and Ashton Ruska, and we all have them in our top 3. So how have their preps been going, and how are they looking in the warm-up room?
So both their preps have been going extremely well. Ashton has had definitely, like, kind of like you mentioned yesterday on the live Q&A, like different life circumstances, stuff to deal with as far as with his PhD and military duties, but that's nothing that we're not used to. So his prep's gone very well, especially like these last few weeks of it. Started to show up very, very strong. And then Bob's prep from nationals all the way up to this point has been PRs after PRs, so obviously looking very strong. As for Charles's prep was great.
Yes.
We did deal with a hamstring pull and then a little bit of back discomfort, but I think we pulled things together well enough to where we're still going to be able to put on something nice today.
So 3 athletes, is it difficult for you to not favor one over the other at any point?
No, especially at this point, because last year was way harder because I had 5 of my athletes going, and they were all in the same flight, whereas this time it's all right, Charles in first flight, we kind of know where he's going to be, and then Bob and Ashton are in the second flight. Now, obviously, between Bob and Ashton, there might be this mindset of like, oh, how do you determine? It's like, hey, we have their ranges. They each know what the game plan is based upon the best that they've hit during training, and it's just going to be based upon how each of them goes. I'm going to be honest, like, hey, this is the highest that I think you have for the day. If Ashton decides that he wants to push for a little bit more, I'll let him. If Bob decides he wants to push for a little bit more, I'll let them.
Okay.
But it's just being completely objective, like, hey, this is what I think you have, this is what I think he has.
Yeah.
If what I think Bob has is a little bit more on that day, that just kind of is what it is. It's just being as objective as possible when it comes to that.
Yes, and we all know you have a really big roster in general of clients. You're a full-time coach, and this year you became a father. And she's here, somewhere in here, your baby's here. Has it been difficult to juggle both coaching and being a dad, being a good husband?
So the first half of the year, because my daughter was born in January, it was definitely a transition. Like, I wasn't getting anywhere near as much sleep. Still having to, get my own training in, be on top of the coaching, like I said, be a good husband, be a good father. It was a transition, but I think because of the amount of structure I already had before she was here, and the moment that Amber was pregnant, I'm already kind of trying to plan. Obviously, there's only so much you can plan for, but I'm trying to plan, like, how I'm going to go about my days, how I'm going to go about my weeks, make sure the quality of coaching doesn't drop, but that I'm also not shortchanging my family. I think it was an overall good transition, and it was the best practice run ever because it happened going into nationals.
Yeah.
So, going to nationals, handling 20-plus people, doing all of that while still being a father, at this point, it's like I've got it pretty down packed. So it's been different, but it makes everything that much more satisfying now. Like, when I get through a full week of writing blogs, going through check-ins, it's like, yo, I did all this and still had time to be with my daughter, be with my wife, so it just gives value to everything I'm doing that much more.
So actually, Marcellus, I actually had a question about game day. So you're known as one of the best coaches in the game right now. So tell us a little bit about giving a peek behind the curtain, if you will. What does game day look like for you? Waking up out of bed, getting ready, getting to the venue, executing. I mean, like, for somebody like you, when you have multiple athletes, how do you actually do your game day handling and then also be able to eat, drink, get things done throughout the day? I imagine that, like, it's pretty hectic, but you probably have some people helping you too, right?
So it just depends. Like at nationals, I was fortunate enough to have some of my clients who are coaches themselves who are competing kind of be there to help me in the warm-up room, so that way I can make sure I'm watching and seeing every single attempt. But let's say, like, during one flight, I'm on the platform with some lifters. I have help with people getting my other lifters warmed up for the previous flight. As far as how I go about my day, I used to make the mistake of, like, trying to get here, like, as early as possible and realize that would just drain me more. And it's like, okay, if I already know my clients will get on weight, they don't need me to hold their hands for weigh-in, so I'll get that extra bit of sleep and rest so I can come in being more mentally prepared. We already have all their game plans. Like, for each of my lifters, there's 3 different options for their third attempts. There's 2 options for their second attempts, and then our openers we only change if something's going wrong with their warm-ups. So that way, we're not coming in with no idea of what we're doing or kind of just guesstimating. We have an idea of where they're going to be range-wise and can adjust the plan as needed, but that's already set in stone. And then as far as eating, I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty bad at that when it comes to, like, make sure I'm on top of eating, like, as I handle. But post-meet, I always go out and eat a lot anyway.
Right.
But, usually I do, like, either have an extra client or if my wife's here, like, she'll make sure I have a smoothie or something like that. Y'all know I sell the Smoothie King, so.
You got to make sure the baby's fed too as well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so much going on.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
It's one of these things where it's kind of like, I kind of just focus on what I need to do, like, handling-wise, and then I'm like, I'll be able to take care of myself when I'm done. Right now, it's about taking care of my athletes.
Definitely. Well, with that, folks, I mean, we're really glad that we had Marcellus on before we got things started. So from here, we're going to kick things back into another commercial, and then we're going to have our national anthem at 11:45. After that, we'll be doing our athlete intros. But from there, that should wrap up our USA Powerlifting Virginia Pro preview show. Thank you so much to Marcellus for joining us. Thank you so much to you guys for watching here. We're so excited to bring this show for you. We're so excited to do the Virginia Pro again. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys in a bit.